Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do something a little bit different and start talking about the South Shore. We've done an awful lot on Conrail so far. We're going to dig into the South Shore Airport Industrial Park Spur in South Bend, Indiana on the west side and the freight operations of it. We'll do a separate video on the passenger. So let's just get started here. Just to get our bearings straight, here's our familiar map of the South Bend area. Of course, the Norfolk Southern Main Line to the south. And here we see the spur going up north, branches off of the South Shore Main Line at Grandview Avenue, runs down along Westmore Street, and then runs up north on Bendix Drive. You kind of see these red hatch marks here. This kind of breaks it into three sections. The first part down here on Bendix Drive in Westmore was street running back in the old days, mostly street running, and it went as far as a gravel pit and Kurt concrete. And in the middle was a second addition that was put onto it, primarily to reach industrial park business here in the phase one of the airport industrial park. We also see this extension that was put to the airport for passenger. We'll cover that in the separate video. And then finally up north we see a third extension that ran up into the phase two of the airport industrial park, but there was never any business on this segment. It was just put in for investment purposes, and we'll talk about that too. So let's get started. Here's a look at the history of the line here. These dates are approximate, but basically the first part ran down Westmore Street and down Bendix Drive, crossing Lincoln Way into the Kurt concrete area, and South Bend Sand and Gravel was the gravel pit lead, which was built probably sometime in the 20s. The Airport Industrial Park Phase 1 extension, probably late 50s, early 60s, that ran almost up to Lathrop, but not quite, and then crossed Bendix again to reach the airport Phase 1 Industrial Park and serve three businesses or so, and even crossed Kenmore Avenue. Track was taken out of Westmore and Bendix in the mid-70s when the street running there ended, relocated to the north of Westmore and the east side of Bendix Drive. Extension to the Phase 2 park north of Lathrop and crossing Bendix Drive again into the park, crossing Boland almost up to Nimitz Parkway was put in sometime in the 70s. The airport passenger terminal extension 92 crossed Bendix Drive with a brand new line that ran into the airport property to the station. We'll talk in detail about that on the second video, which will cover the construction of that new extension. The Phase 2 extension crossings were paved over sometime in 90-ish, early 90s maybe, and then the track was removed late 2000s approximately. Freight ends completely and some track removed in the Phase 1 industrial park area about 2000. And only passenger service uses the branch today, and the future of that is even in doubt with talk of possibly moving the airport passenger station, but probably most likely running a new line into it from the west to cut off some of the time and do away with all the crossings on this branch. So let's kind of look here at another map again just to get our bearings straight once more, kind of with some familiar landmarks. The airport, this is the way it looks today, what's in place, pretty much the main line. But I've kind of penciled in here the sidings in the airport Phase 1, which is where a lot of the business was in the later years. Kurt Concrete was located down near Lincoln Way. That had a lot of business in the early years. And then finally this final third part branch, which has now been removed. Another map we'll just kind of throw up here. This is kind of a map that I found on the internet. similar to a Conrail ZTS map, which shows a lot of detail of this spur, but it's also a little bit confusing because it's a very busy map and not to scale. The main thing here is just seeing the branch itself running along Westmore of Bendix Drive, and this shows all of the sightings that were in Kurt Concrete at that time, just north of Lincoln Way. So now let's start taking this thing apart piece by piece. Here's Grandview Avenue running north and south. We see how this branches off here and then runs up northeast through a wooded area and then eastward along the north side of Westmore. Down here at the bottom you also see a line running east. This was the track that was used to reach a yard in business in Bendix back in the day, and also to get into the center of South Bend when the tracks used to run down the middle of LaSalle Avenue and Orange. That'll be another video as well, but let's just get started now on this first part. Here was a shot on Sheridan Avenue of a freight going eastward. A little bit smoky looking, apologize for that, but that's about the best we had at the time. But it kind of is neat to see a train crossing that street, something you don't see today. Here's the caboose of that freight with a Union Pacific we can handle at boxcar. Looking again here at Westmore, this was back when the track used to run down the middle of the street. The Indiana Railroad trolley line also had a track that ran down Westmore Street. This was a John Strombeck photograph, probably from the middle 70s when they was just getting ready to start doing the relocation. And you see the sectional track here in place on the north side of Westmore. Again, looking more at Westmore Street here, and we see how the track came eastward. This was the new alignment on the north side of Westmore, crossing Bendix Drive and then heading north on the east side. Down here in the lower right hand corner, you still see embedded in pavement the old alignment which used to run down the streets, curving right through the intersection. Here's a great shot of that old alignment, 1969 Harry Zimmer. This was a box cab electric powered freight. One of the things that most non-rail fans don't realize is the fact of the South Shore having as much freight business as it did. But it always has had, even in South Bend, there was a lot of it, as we shall see, and they were electric powered. These cabs, unfortunately, have all been scrapped. This train was probably bringing covered hoppers from Kurt Concrete, South Bend, Sand and Gravel. Now we move back up Bendix Drive here. Again, the new alignment of the track, crossing Bonds Avenue, Green Street, and Ardmore Trail. Here was a look at a southbound or westbound freight going down alongside Bendix Drive, looking south toward Bendix, even complete with a caboose. The feature here to note is this bi-level car that had the Army vehicles. These were from AM General, and we'll talk about that later. Another shot here, Old Valley American Bank, a little bit farther north up on Bendix Drive near Bonds Avenue, looking northeastward. Again, freight southbound. Here's a shot from the older days, another one of them box cabs coming southbound on Bendix Drive, street running at its best. Again, this track was relocated to the east in the middle 70s. This is just a snippet of some new video we found on Bendix Drive of the northbound freight. We'll be posting this video in entirety in the future. Here we see overlooking Lincoln Way West and Bendix Drive. We get a good look here at the north-south new alignment of the track. And in the pavement, we kind of see embedded here some track. This is erroneously labeled as being a spur to Kirk concrete in some photos I've seen, but that's actually the loop that the track used to take before it was aligned. Here's a shot from 1966, not very good quality, but you do see here the old alignment, how it was in that bow pattern coming through the Kurt concrete complex. And you can also see some of the many freight cars that were in the complex at that time. This is a look at a spur that is still in place today into the Kurt concrete complex. We see here Bendix Drive north and south, a switch here with a siding that runs into the complex a fair distance to a stopper. This switch has been removed for many years now, so there's not any use of this at the present time. Good shot from Cindy Goodrick, probably sometime in the 60s, just showing how much freight business was going on in the Kurt complex. You can see hopper cars spotted to the right and hopper cars spotted to the left. This was a gravity unloading area here where sand was unloaded. I remember that well as a child, playing in that area with my friends. And a shot of the South Bend Sand and Gravel switch engine, or one of them. I'm not sure how many they had, but like I say, there was a lot of track in there. Now heading up north once again, this is 40 Drive, Bendix running north and south. This was the second extension with a passing siding. And here we see the scar of the line that went into the industrial park to serve the industries, and we'll take a little better look at those. This probably would have been about 1987, showing a very good look here at the trackage in there. Kind of neat and picture perfect, almost something that would look very well on a train layout. Could probably do this whole thing in scale if you were so inclined. But it shows here the three major customers. Down in the right lower corner, we see what was Weyerhaeuser in the old days when they primarily took boxcars. But then it became Hedwin and Solvay, and I'm not sure what it is today. But in later years, it was mainly covered hoppers that were unloaded there. Simon Brothers was up to the north with an inside dock, and numerous food and refrigerated products were unloaded there. And then we had General Liquors, which also had a siding just east of Canmore Avenue. And this is how the track looks today. You can still see the good scar of where the track came into the complex, but much more neglected with nature taking over. You can still see the spur in evidence down at the ex-Weyerhaeuser in the lower right-hand corner. Probably that being a private spur, it was not removed or salvaged when the other track was removed. Now here's a look at some freight action there at 40 Drive. Again, the diesel locomotives of the South Shore, probably maneuvering freight cars for spotting at one of the industries. Shot here, the locomotive crossing Bendix Drive. That crossing now completely removed, as well as most of that track. Locomotives again going into the complex. You can see boxcars having been spotted at that time at the Weyerhaeuser complex, or whatever it was at this particular time. And this is a great shot, John Strombeck photo. This is one of the, they were called Little Joes, but I've always called them Little Joes because that's what I called them as a kid. But the South Shore just referred to these at 800s. And these locomotives were actually built for the Soviet Union. There was 20 of them that were manufactured, but they never got delivered. And the South Shore ended up with 3 of them. This particular one here, number 803, is now retired at the Illinois Railway Museum. But just sheer size of that locomotive, that's what was cute about the little designation. There was nothing little about these things. As you can see there, it pretty much eclipses all 4 lanes of Bendix Drive. This is a short clip from the South Shore at Bendix Drive video that's on this channel. If you haven't watched it, check it out or watch it again. Keep it running and do something else, and that helps the channel by giving us some more views. So now we get down to Kenmore Avenue, looking eastward here. Again, a freight working on that track over there, probably maneuvering the covered hoppers for the, I believe it was Solvay at the time, the old Weyerhaeuser complex. Another John Strombeck photo from 1975 here, working the Simon Brothers. It looks like Pacific Fruit Express cars, either preparing to go into the building or having just been brought out. And just kind of a current photo here, just kind of showing the starkness of how things are today, with nature quickly reclaiming all of what used to be. Now we get into that ill-fated extension here, just to get your bearings straight here. We have Bendix Drive running north and south, a Lathrop crossing here, and you see it dashed in red how the line crossed Lathrop, crossed Bendix again, and then came into this park, crossing Boland Drive, and then running up almost to Nimitz Parkway. Little better shot of what that looked like in its glory, with the broad curves and trackage in place, but again, never used. Now, the only exception to that was down here at Lathrop, and we'll talk about that here in the next slide. In the late 80s and early 90s, a ramp was put in just to the south of Lathrop, and they had a nice long straight piece of track where they could line up the bi-levels and were able to load the military vehicles from the AM General plant. And so that kind of really put the kibosh on anything going any farther north with this blocking, but there weren't any business takers up there anyway. But at this period, there was ramps in various locations around town. The Grand Trunk even had one down at Sample and Olive, as there was just being so many of these vehicles manufactured at AM General. Just about every railroad that could was getting involved in the loading. And finally here we see another shot down at Bendix and Westmore. This was taken on a Saturday morning, one of the bi-levels that was just loaded the evening before was quickly being taken westward out of South Bend. So I hope you've enjoyed this look at the airport industrial freight spur. As I said, there'll be a second video which will concentrate on the passenger, as well as the new passenger extension that was put in to the airport in 1992. If you'd like more information on the South Shore, a couple good things here I put down are the southshore.railfan.net on the internet. There's a lot of good information and pictures. And also the Spirit of the South Shore book with its ISBN number there. I'm sure that's long out of print, but you could probably still obtain a copy on eBay or check one out of a local library. So again, like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.